What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day today. Beautiful day. I'm here having a fresh cup of Lipton tea. Just made it inside. I used fire. Delicious. Delicious. They should get an award every time, I have it. I should give them an award. That's good tea. A little bit hot right now. I just took it off of the fire. So I was thinking, in the old days, cereal commercials for children. You'd sit at home, watch cartoons, right? And they always had cereals sponsoring the cartoons and other things too, but I don't see those interesting commercials anymore. Captain Crunch, Alphabets, Pops, they had all these cereal brands. And well, first of all, I was not a cereal eater. I was more like scrambled eggs or eggs and toast, eggs and English muffin, things like that. Cereal was not really high on the list for breakfast for me. But I'll tell you what happened. I would watch these commercials and they had these free little gifts inside. And we'd go shopping on Fridays and I'd grab a box. Like Count Chocula. Those they had little gifts they'd give you inside. There was like a little package, and I'd grab it for that reason. Then I'd go home, I'd empty it in a big bowl, and I'd get the little surprise thing out. There was one that was like a spoon that I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly, but it was a spoon that said that if you eat with the spoon, you'll grow a tree in your stomach. And I went and got it. But they had all these cool commercials back then. These kids, they lived in the forest. They had a little clubhouse there. And then Alphabet cereal was part of their, no, it was that, not Alphabet's, the other one, the Honeycomb. Honeycomb's got a big bite. And they had a measuring thing, a ruler or something that would measure it. So, yeah. I don't know. I've had cereal, but not. It wasn't a popular thing in my house. We could have had a cereal box in the cupboard for 2-3 years before we tossed it. Didn't really, we'd eat from it once or twice, and then it would go on the side. I remember going to school, and if you got there early enough, the cafeteria had breakfast. But what kind of breakfast? They had those teeny weeny cereal boxes, a little bowl and a teeny weeny milk. And you'd sit there, and I would look around, I'm saying, is this what people eat, like the portion that they eat at home? Because I'm looking at that cereal box, and I would say I need 3 of those, and I need, double the milk. But I remember sitting there, I had a table, had a friend of mine there, his name was Carl, and another kid named Anthony, and we would sit at the table just discussing things and eating our cereal. But I wouldn't really show up for breakfast that often. Once in a blue sun, I would show up. Yeah, commercials are not creative anymore. Just, in the old days, my favorite commercial, very few people remember it, but Crest. And it was basically a kid who got a checkup, and it was not good news. They had cavities, and the opening scene was the pharmacy. And the pharmacist was a guy who looked like he should have retired 20 years before. Kid would run in, I got 3 cavities. And then the dentist, he would say, oh, let me show you. You need to use Crest. Crest is recommended by the Dental Association. And then he'd go over there and have Crest stacked up nice and neat. The other ones were all no-name brands. You didn't know what they were. They were all generic looking. And the Crest one was nice. It had that kind of like a Pontiac symbol on the side, that arrow. And then he would show where the American Dental Association recommended it, as they do with all the other ones. So, but that was such a good commercial that to this day, I prefer Crest over every other brand. Colgate is a close second. I will use Colgate. Marvis, another good one. Remember Pearl Drops? That was a good one. Women would lick their teeth. They would lick their teeth after they would brush them with Pearl Drops. I don't even know if they still sell that stuff. But that was a cool commercial. And then he would recommend the Crest. And then it would be like months later, kid would come back and say, no cavities this time. And he would say, yeah, it's because of the Crest. And then Colgate had a cool commercial. Colgate had a piece of chalk about that long, and they had some kind of solution in a cup. It was like dark blue or something, and they would dip the chalk in there, and they would say, Colgate penetrates, like it penetrates the enamel. Are we going to believe that Colgate would penetrate the enamel? But anyway, so they would pull out the chalk and they would break it, and that's whatever that was would penetrate into the chalk. So that was another memorable commercial. Bounty towels, those commercials were classic. They had Bounty, they'd wet it, and then they'd put like an anvil on top, and it wouldn't break through. Or they would have two glasses with equal amount of fluid. They would use the leading brand next to Bounty, and Bounty would pull it all out. There wouldn't even be an atom of water or a molecule of water left. The other one would have dripping and dripping. Or somebody would accidentally spill something on a counter, and they'd take out Bounty and wipe it, and there wouldn't be a drop left. So the reason we remember those commercials is because they were really good commercials. The stuck on Band-Aid thing, I'm stuck, how'd that go? I'm stuck on Band-Aids because Band-Aids are stuck on me or something like that. It was a bunch of guys in the shower. I don't know why they chose that, but anyway, to show that the Band-Aid brand did not unstick even though it was in the shower. And that one, and Ivory commercials with the Ivory goofy girls claiming how good their skin looked. Irish Spring, that was another good commercial. Coast, take a little whiff and her eye would open up. Sizzling, there was a product, I don't know what it was made out of, paper, but they would say, don't bring home the bacon, think lean, bring home the sizzling. That was their phrase. Nestle Quick, that was a good commercial. That rabbit, was that silly rabbit, Tricks for Kids, or Twixer for Kids, whatever. Rabbit was trying to get the cereal. It's a long time ago. It's tough to remember them all, but I'm trying to think what other one was good. Of course, in the old days, they had commercials for luxury cars. The Ford Mercury cars, and they had these actors, very sophisticated, James Bond types, driving them in their neighborhood. Nice big yacht boats kind of looking cars. But now, they're not that good commercials. I don't know if they need to hire better agencies. Campbell's, good. Remember that commercial? They had a kid be hungry. His mother would make him some Campbell's because she was lazy, did not want to cook. And so she would pull out the Campbell's, and he thought it was homemade. Chef Boyardee, another cool commercial. And of course, Lipton Tea. What's her name? Dawn Meredith made good commercials for Lipton Tea. Twinkies, there were cartoons, Twinkies. Those commercials were, I used to eat a Twinkie once in a while. I haven't had a Twinkie in a long time now, but if I did, it would be very nostalgic to me from the old days. And then Oscar Mayer, little kids would sing the Oscar Mayer song. What other products? Jello, who did the Jello commercials? Those were all over the place back then, Jello, and pudding. Delicious, man, so good. I was out, I got thirsty today, and I went and I bought a big thing of Arizona tea. Oh man, I drank that. I should have bought two. I drank that so fast. It was one of those big, big tea things, and I just drank at speed of light. You know, Choosy Mothers, choose Jif. Another Sharp commercial. But in the days where cartoons ruled Saturday mornings, cereal dominated. Cereal dominated. Kool-Aid was another one. Kool-Aid would bust down the wall. And then about 13 years ago, I made a video, and I was wondering in the video whatever happened to Louise McNamara. I almost said McIntyre, thinking of the New Kids on the Block. But Louise McNamara, whatever happened to her? She had a little show on PBS when I was a kid, and it was called All About You. All About You. And it was different things about the body, about what to eat, different things like that. And I loved watching her. She was like in her little studio room, and she had that voice, monotone. So 13 years ago, I made a video saying whatever happened to her. I used to watch her all the time, and my favorite thing about the show was the theme song. It was an instrumental. It had a dude like a magician, and then it had this, you gotta hear it, All About You. Check it out. There's a bunch of videos now. When I did my video 13 years ago, you couldn't find her, but now you find a bunch of people have posted the old All About You show, and that was one of my go-to shows, as they say. I would go in my room and I'd watch that, and that theme music would put me in the mood. I don't know, it was like, now I hear it and it brings me back to when I was like in kindergarten. So somebody sent me a picture of her, and they said this is from recent times. I guess up until, I don't know when it was, a few years ago, she was still alive. She may still be alive, I don't know. But no longer has McNamara. Now it's a different name. I guess she got married, I don't know. And you can tell it's her, but it's like an old woman now. Where back then she was nice and young, looked like she was in her 20s. And she had I don't know, tough to, do a female's voice, but she had a different style of a voice. And I love that show. I wish I could meet her. Some of these people, that I used to watch as a kid, I wish I met them when I was older. I would tell them how enjoyable their shows were. But she's one of them. I don't know who wrote that theme song, but I would tell whoever wrote that I want to meet them as well. So, Louise McNamara. I think it's, somebody said her last name now is Greep or Geep or something like that, But anyway, they had sent me an article, and it was her in the picture taken in, like in recent years. And I know I'm not going to see how she looked, like she's not going to look now how she looked back then, right? But somehow my mind thinks that that should be the case until I look at the picture and I go, wow, she's like an old lady now. Not a big deal. That's if you live long enough, you get old. But, like I think about my kindergarten teacher. Kindergarten number 1, she was young. Kindergarten number 2, she was an older woman when I had her, so she died. It was in the newspaper, and a friend of mine told me, it's in the newspaper, kindergarten teacher number 2 died. But kindergarten teacher number 1, she looked like she was mid-20s back then, somewhere around there. So there's a good possibility she's still around. I would love to bump into her and tell her, you know what, I remember all that stuff. I don't know if she remembers me. Probably not. Talking a lot of kids, but I remember her. And I'm sure if I saw her now, she would be very old. Very old. Even though the image I have in my head is how she looked when I had her as a teacher, very young, My sister had a teacher in first grade, and that teacher was straight out of college. So she was like 22, and she was very kind and very sweet and all that. And she replaced this mean teacher that my sister had for the first couple months of the year. And all of a sudden, as if my sister had wished it, this really, really nice new teacher came in. and she was so young, like I said, about 22. Well, my sister sent me a picture of her recently, and now she's an old woman. Old woman. It's like we time traveled, you know, and landed now. Here come the crows. So yeah, I'd like to see some of these people from my past. My first grade teacher may still be alive. I would say back then she was probably late 20s. It's a possibility. My third grade teacher, possibly still around. She was young. She couldn't have been more than 23 back then. My second grade teacher, no way, is alive. She was old when I had her, so it's fourth grade, I know, is alive. Fifth grade, alive. Sixth grade, not alive. I mean, I can't list all of them that I had, but the one that I had for homeroom and math, not alive. I know that for a fact. Seventh grade, tough to believe. They were old back then. And then eighth grade, the teacher I had for English died a few years ago, not alive. Some of my high school teachers still around. They're old, but they're around. I don't know if all of them are around, but I know some of them are. You know, you want to run into them now as an adult. And, you know, because you'll have a different conversation from this side. You know, when you're a kid, they don't treat you the way they should. They treat you a little bit rough. When you get a little older, if they treat you rough, you'll kick their ass. So, you know, they don't do that. I will say that I didn't have this guy as a teacher, but I never had any interaction with him in high school. But I bumped into a teacher from my high school about 5 years after I graduated. And he came in, he recognized me, I recognized him, I knew who he was. And he talked to me like I was his best friend. You know, I go, that's how you guys are like, you know, that's a fake image you guys present, that mean, you know, mean thing. But yeah, he was very nice. And, you know, he was even telling me, you know, a little gossip about the other teachers. And, yeah, guess once you leave, you know, and you're not part of their thing anymore, they treat you a lot better. Who else? Kids that I had in you know, throughout my school years. I think of them at times, and I go, whatever happened to that kid? Whatever happened to that, you know, girl that I knew in, you know, sixth grade? I will tell you a funny story though. There was this girl, had a crush on her, sixth and seventh grade, and you know, I remember, you know that feeling you get when you're around somebody, when you have a crush. You know, it's like a bit of euphoria. I don't know, you can't describe it, but you know the feeling. And when she was around, it was like the day was like, you know, blooming. Everything was blooming around me when she was around. If she was sick and wasn't in school, that day was a drag. So years went by like they usually do, and I go into an Uno pizza place, you know, the Chicago style deep dish pizza place, and she's working there, and she's my waitress. Now you'd think I would say hi, hey, well, you know, neither she nor I, right, said anything like, hey, you know, you went to that school, I was in that class, remember me? I know she remembered me because we had interaction every day. And I didn't say anything, we just pretended we didn't know each other, and I was with a friend of mine. So we sat down, we ordered, very nice, she was very nice, but she acted as if, you know, just another customer, no connection from the past, and I acted the same way. So at the end of it, I didn't finish my meal. Usually I do, I don't know, that day maybe I had something before, and she said, would you like that boxed? And I said, sure. Generally, I don't, you know, I say throw it out, you know, because, I don't know. But anyway, I said sure. She boxed it up nice and neat, brought it back. And then we sat there for another 10 minutes, me and my friend. We talked a little bit, and then we got up to leave, get in the car, we drive off, and I'm like, oh, I forgot the food. But then I didn't want to go in there like a, schmuck and say I forgot and then she would say, oh, I just threw that out. And then you feel even, more ridiculous. So instead of that, I just left. And probably she went to the table and she said to herself, what was the point of all that? I went and I wrapped it up and everything, and he forgot it. Or he left it on purpose. It was not on purpose. But anyway, when I saw her, and this is many, 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 many years ago. This is in the 90s, early 90s. But when I saw her, she was really, really good looking. She got a little bit modelish looking there, and very curvy. Which, when I knew her before, did not look like curvy. No. And how could she? She was in the 6th and 7th grade. So yeah, I saw her again, and then. She lived about 4 blocks from my house. So we used to get the bus together, it was me and 15 other kids at that bus stop. And her house was literally where the bus stop was. So she would roll out of bed, wash up, eat breakfast, and then go downstairs. Right in front of her house was the bus stop. So, but yeah, I had a crush on her for a long time. Yeah, tough to describe that feeling, but when you have that feeling, it's like euphoria. I don't know. Something inside you is like alive. But yeah, it's an awesome feeling, and everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about if they've experienced that emotion. And every song that's played during the time of that crush feeling, that I'm into you feeling, you remember that song, and when you hear that tune later on in life, it kind of gives you some of those feelings again. It kind of makes them, come alive for a minute or so. So, yeah, that's life. You meet people, you lose contact. I haven't had contact with her since 6th and 7th grade, other than that one time in that pizzeria. So, yeah, it was many years, not 5. It was probably like 10 years later, from 5th, 6th grade. 6th, 7th grade. So, those were my arcade days. One-track mind back then. It's like I gotta get to the arcade. I gotta play. I gotta play Defender. I gotta play Asteroids. I gotta play. Donkey Kong came out in those days, but I was okay with it. But I was not obsessed by it like I was with Defender. Defender, I was obsessed. Galaga Galaxy is another. Yeah, I remember going into the arcade, and all arcades had a unique smell to them. I can't describe the smell, but it was like an arcade smell. Anybody who knows about arcades knows what I'm talking about. Like a bowling alley smell type thing. And you'd go in there and it was like, I don't know, tough to describe. It was almost like a junkie being in charge of a pharmacy. That's what you felt like. You'd go in there, you were addicted to all the games, couldn't get enough. The second you put the last quarter in, you were depressed about it. You were like, that's it, it's my last quarter. Then you'd walk around digging into your pockets trying to find an extra quarter somewhere, and then you'd walk home kind of like you just lost your house gambling in Vegas. But yeah, big fascination with the arcade in those days. Good hand-eye coordination. Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Dig Dug, used to play that. Tempest, Time Pilot 84. Love those games. Scrambler, another one that was one of my, on my list of games. And then there was another one, like the Olympics. You had to hit those 2 buttons really fast. It was a javelin, it was a runner, jumper. Play that, and then that karate game. It was like two guys one that was you, the other one could have been, doubles that you were playing, or it could have been against the computer, and it was like half point, full point. You got to get 2 points, and then you won the match and you went on. And then in between every so many matches, they had, like, you had to hit a bull, you had to break boards. One of them, they were throwing like a plant with a pot at you. You had to like karate chop it or kick it in time. And I love that game. And of course, Punch Out. Punch Out, I could be there all night playing Punch Out. You had Glass Joe, Piston Hurricane would fight. What was the other guy there? Bald Bull, Pizza Pasta. The Sandman was a champion. Kid Quick, Brooklyn, New York. Piston Hurricane, I think it was obviously Detroit, Piston Hurricane. But yeah, I'd play that game a lot. And then you'd win the championship by beating the Sandman. And then you'd fight the same guys all over again, but they were much better. Glass Joe, he was much better. Piston Hurricane was pretty good. Bald Bull, very good, from Istanbul, Turkey. And in real life in boxing, every time you win a fight, you don't go up in weight. I mean, you remain the same weight, but the opponent gets heavier and heavier and heavier. You fight the same weight class. So if you're 170 pounds, you fight people within that range. You don't beat the first guy at 165, then the next guy is 175, then the next guy is like 190, the next guy after that is 200, then you got another guy who's 220, and you're still at 165, 170. No, but in Punch Out, that's how it works. You start off light guy, then he gets heavier and heavier until you fight the champion, who's the heavyweight. So I don't know who came up with that, but that's not correct. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.